Beloved, listen carefully. There are moments in history when heaven does not whisper. Heaven sound the alarm. This is not a gentle nudge. This is not a casual reminder. This is a red alert from God. For centuries, humanity has drifted, distracted, divided, and deceived. Hearts have grown cold. Truth has been diluted. Voices have become louder, but spirits have become quieter. But now, something is shifting. Deep in the unseen realm, there is movement, a divine urgency, a holy interruption, and not everyone can feel it, because this calling is not for the comfortable. It is not for the distracted. It is not for those asleep in their faith. This calling is for the awake. Hear this like a prophetic echo. God is raising a remnant, a people who will not bow to pressure, a people who will not trade truth for approval, a people who will stand when others sit, who will speak when others stay silent, who will walk in light when a world chooses darkness. But let me tell you something honestly. This calling is not easy. It will stretch you. It will separate you. It will require you to let go of things you once thought you needed. Because before God elevates, He purifies. Before He sends, He prepares. And preparation often feels like isolation. You may be in a season right now where you feel alone, misunderstood, disconnected from people you once walked with. But what if I told you? That's not rejection. That's divine redirection. God is removing distractions to sharpen your focus. He is closing doors to protect your destiny. He is silencing noise so you can finally hear His voice. This is the red alert, not of destruction, but of awakening. The Spirit is saying, wake up, return, realign, return to your first love, return to your purpose, return to the fire you once carried. Because time is not as abundant as you think. Opportunities are passing, destinies are waiting, souls are searching, and heaven is asking, who will go? Few will answer, because many want blessings, but few want the burden. Many want the promise, but few will endure the process. Many want to be seen, but few are willing to be set apart. But if something inside you is stirring right now, if your spirit feels this weight, this urgency, this fire, that is not coincidence. That is confirmation. You are not created to blend in. You are not called to be silent. You are not designed to live an ordinary life. You carry something eternal, something powerful, something heaven is ready to release through you. But you must respond. So today, this is your moment. Not tomorrow, not one day. Today, lay aside the distractions. Silence the noise. Refocus your heart. Say, God, I hear you. Even when I don't fully understand, I will follow. Even when it costs me, I will obey. Even when I stand alone, I will trust you. Because when heaven sends a red alert, it is not to scare you. It is to prepare you. Prepare you for what's coming. Prepare you for who you're becoming. Prepare you for the assignment that only you can fulfill. And mark this. Those who respond now will walk in a dimension of purpose, clarity, and power that few will ever experience. Not because they are better, but because they were willing. So don't ignore this moment. Don't scroll past this feeling. Don't silence this voice inside you. This is your calling. Rare, sacred, urgent. Heaven has sounded the alarm. The question is not whether God is speaking. The question is, are you listening? There are moments in history when heaven shifts from silence into urgency, when the stillness of the spiritual realm is interrupted by a divine signal that cannot be ignored. This is not a gentle invitation or a soft whisper carried by comfort. This is an alarm, clear, piercing, and intentional. It is a call that reaches beyond ordinary awareness and touches the deepest part of the human spirit. Many continue their lives unchanged, distracted by routine and consumed by temporary concerns. Yet beneath the surface, something far greater is unfolding. A divine urgency is being released, and it is not random. It is precise, purposeful, and directed toward those who are sensitive enough to discern it. This kind of alert does not come without reason. It emerges in times when truth has been overshadowed, when priorities have shifted away from what is eternal toward what is fleeting. The noise of the world grows louder, yet the ability to perceive what truly matters becomes weaker. In such moments, heaven intervenes, not to condemn, but to awaken. The alarm is not rooted in fear, but in urgency. It carries a weight that presses on the heart, a sense that something must change, something must realign. It disrupts comfort zones and challenges complacency, shaking the foundations of what once felt stable and familiar. Those who are attentive begin to notice it in subtle ways at first. A restlessness that cannot be explained. A deep awareness that life is meant for more than routine existence. A growing discomfort with compromise and a longing for something pure and unshaken. This is how the alarm begins to resonate within the soul. It is not always loud in sound, but it is undeniable in impact. It calls for attention, for reflection, for a turning away from distractions that have quietly taken control. The difficulty is that not everyone recognizes it. Many are conditioned to ignore spiritual signals, trained by the pace of the world to dismiss anything that demands stillness and depth. The alarm continues to sound, but is drowned out by constant noise, ambitions, worries, entertainment, and endless movement. Yet for those who pause, even briefly, there is a realization that this moment carries significance. It is not ordinary. It is not accidental. It is a divine interruption designed to redirect the course of a life. This alert is also selective in its effect. It does not force itself upon anyone, nor does it demand a response through pressure. Instead, it invites awareness. It separates those who are willing to listen from those who choose to remain unaware. The call reaches many, but only a few respond with understanding. It requires sensitivity, humility, and a willingness to step beyond what is comfortable. The alarm challenges existing patterns, exposing areas that have been neglected or ignored. It reveals the distance between where one is and where one is meant to be, creating a tension that cannot be easily dismissed. In this moment of divine urgency, clarity begins to emerge for those who are willing to see. Priorities start to shift, and what once seemed important begins to lose its hold. There's a growing desire to align with something higher, something lasting. The distractions that once consumed attention begin to feel empty, unable to satisfy the deeper need that has been awakened. This is the effect of the alarm. It reorders perspective, bringing into focus what truly matters while quietly dismantling what is not. There comes a stage in the journey of faith where movement slows, relationships shift, and familiar patterns begin to break apart. What once felt stable starts to feel uncertain, and what once brought comfort begins to lose its grip. This is not random loss or meaningless disruption. It is a deliberate process of separation, where God begins to draw a line between what belongs in your calling and what is not. It often feels uncomfortable because it touches areas that were deeply rooted, habits, environments, even people who once seemed essential to your path. This process does not announce itself with clarity at first. It begins subtly, through small changes that create distance. Conversations become different, connections feel strained, and alignment with certain spaces no longer feels natural. There's a growing awareness that continuing in the same direction would require compromise. What once felt acceptable now creates unease, and what once seemed harmless now feels like a barrier. This inner shift is part of refinement, a sign that your spirit is being trained to recognize truth more clearly. Separation is rarely easy because it challenges attachment. It confronts the desire to hold on to what is familiar, even when it no longer serves a purpose in your growth. The mind resists it, searching for ways to restore what is being removed, but the spirit recognizes that something deeper is taking place. God does not remove without intention. Every disconnection, every closed door, every shift carries purpose. It is part of a larger design aimed at preparing you for something that requires greater clarity and strength. In this process, refinement becomes unavoidable. It is not only external things that are being separated, but internal patterns as well. Attitudes, thoughts, and hidden motives come into focus. There's a stripping away of what is unnecessary, a refining of character that often feels like pressure. Weaknesses are exposed, not to bring shame, but to bring transformation. The process reveals where growth is needed, where discipline must be developed, and where surrender must take place. It demands honesty, forcing you to confront parts of yourself that may have been ignored. Isolation can also become a part of this journey, not as punishment, but as preparation. In moments of solitude, distractions lose their power and clarity begins to form. It is in these spaces that deeper understanding develops, where reliance shifts away from external validation and toward a stronger connection with God. What once depended on people or circumstances begins to stand on something more stable. This is where identity is strengthened, where purpose becomes clearer, and where conviction is formed. The separation process also sharpens discernment. You begin to recognize what aligns with your calling and what pulls you away from it. Decisions that once seemed simple now require deeper thought. There's a heightened awareness of influence, of the environments you step into and the voices you allow to shape your thinking. This sensitivity is not meant to isolate you from the world, but to position you correctly within it. It teaches you to move with intention, to choose alignment over convenience. Through all of this, there's a quiet restructuring taking place. Foundations are being rebuilt, priorities are being reordered, and strength is being developed in areas that were once overlooked. What feels like loss is often preparation, clearing space for what is necessary. What feels like distance is often protection, guiding you away from paths that would limit your growth. The process may feel slow and uncertain, but it is precise, shaping you into someone capable of carrying what comes next. There are moments when something begins to stir deep within, quietly at first, almost unnoticeable, yet impossible to ignore once it takes hold. It is not driven by external pressure or sudden change, but by an internal awakening that shifts perception. What once felt normal begins to feel incomplete, and what once satisfied no longer carries the same weight. This stirring is not confusion, it is recognition. A realization that there is more to life than routine, more to faith than surface-level belief, and more to purpose than passive existence. This awakening often begins with an awareness of distance from clarity, from purpose, from the depth of connection that once felt natural. It creates a sense of longing, not rooted in lack, but in rediscovery. There is a pull towards something deeper, something more aligned, something that cannot be replaced by distractions or temporary fulfillment. This is where the call becomes personal. It is no longer just an external message or a distant idea. It becomes an internal conviction that demands attention. As this awareness grows, priorities begin to shift. Things that once seemed urgent begin to lose their intensity, while things that were once overlooked start to take center stage. Time feels different, decisions carry more weight, and there's a growing desire to be intentional rather than reactive. This is not about abandoning responsibility or withdrawing from life, but about engaging with it in a more aligned and purposeful way. The awakening reshapes focus, bringing clarity to what truly matters. With this shift comes a deeper sensitivity to truth. There is less tolerance for compromise, less comfort in half-hearted commitment, and less desire to conform to expectations that conflict with inner conviction. The voice of distraction becomes easier to recognize, and the pull of authenticity becomes stronger. This is where alignment begins to take form, not as a single decision, but as a continuous process of choosing what reflects truth over what offers convenience. The awakening also brings a renewed sense of responsibility. It is no longer enough to simply believe. There's a call to live with intention. Actions, words, and choices begin to reflect a deeper understanding of purpose. There's a recognition that influence extends beyond the self, that every decision carries impact. This awareness does not create pressure in a negative sense, but it does create accountability. It encourages growth, discipline, and a commitment to move forward with clarity. At times, this process can feel overwhelming. The contrast between what is and what could be becomes more visible, and the gap between current reality and desired alignment can feel significant. There may be moments of doubt, questioning whether the change is worth the effort or whether the path ahead is too uncertain. Yet within that uncertainty, there is also a steady sense of direction, a quiet assurance that the shift is necessary. The awakening continues to deepen as attention is given to it. The more it is acknowledged, the stronger it becomes. It shapes thought patterns, influences decisions, and redirects focus toward what carries lasting value. It creates a momentum that moves away from passivity and toward intentional living. What began as a subtle stirring grows into a defining force, guiding the way forward with clarity and conviction. There's always a moment when a calling moves from awareness into decision, when what has been felt internally demands a response. This is where everything shifts. The message has been heard, the stirring has been recognized, and the process of preparation has already begun, but none of it reaches its full meaning until there's a choice to respond. This is the point where many hesitate, not because they do not understand, but because they understand enough to realize that responding will require change. The response is not always loud or dramatic. It often begins quietly, through a decision made within, a commitment to move differently, to think differently, to live with intention rather than habit. It is the moment when faith becomes active rather than passive, when belief begins to shape action. This decision carries weight because it sets direction. It defines whether the calling will remain an idea or become a reality. Those who choose to respond quickly discover that the path ahead is not defined by ease. It requires consistency, discipline, and a willingness to continue even when clarity is not complete. There are moments when progress feels slow, when results are not immediate, and when doubt attempts to interrupt the process. The difference lies in persistence. Responding to a calling is not a one-time decision, but a continuous alignment that must be maintained through changing circumstances. There's also a cost involved. Responding often means letting go of what no longer aligns, even when it is comfortable or familiar. It may require stepping away from environments that limit growth, releasing mindsets that create hesitation, and embracing responsibility that feels larger than what was previously carried. This cost is not meant to burden, but to refine. It creates space for something greater, something that cannot exist alongside what is being released. As the response becomes consistent, a transformation begins to take place. Confidence grows, not from external validation, but from internal clarity. There is a deeper sense of direction, a stronger awareness of purpose, and a growing ability to navigate challenges without losing focus. This transformation is gradual, built through repeated choices that reinforce alignment. Each step forward strengthens conviction, making it easier to continue even when the path is not fully visible. There's also a shift in perspective. What once seemed difficult begins to feel necessary. Challenges are no longer viewed as obstacles, but as part of the process. They provide opportunities to develop resilience, to refine understanding, and to strengthen commitment. This change in perspective allows movement to continue without being hindered by temporary setbacks. The response also creates influence beyond the individual. Choices begin to affect others, not through force, but through example. Consistency, clarity, and purpose become visible, creating an impact that extends outward. This influence is not always immediate or obvious, but it grows over time as actions align with intention. It becomes a reflection of what is possible when a calling is taken seriously. Through this ongoing response, preparation continues to unfold. Each step builds upon the last, creating a foundation strong enough to carry what comes next. What began as a moment of decision develops into a way of living, where alignment is no longer occasional, but consistent. The path becomes clearer, not because every detail is revealed, but because direction is firmly established.